This conference will now be recorded.
Yeah. We'll see how that works. I have another alternative. It's the cheapest alternative we got. There you go. Are we recording? Are we on? Ready to roll? All right, we'll call this meeting to order. And the first thing we'll do is entertain a motion to go into closed session.
I'll make the motion.
All right, second.
Second.
All in favor? All right, we are now in closed session
Just for the record, it's for attorney-client privilege.
I'm sorry.
And property acquisition.
for attorney-client property acquisition. We'll be back.
This conference will
recording.
now be
Okay, so we
recorded.
come out of the closed session first, right?
We've already had some for this. The motion to adjourn at the special meeting,
Okay,
and then we'll get it in record.
all right. Good evening, everybody. As most of you may know, we had a closed session, so now I need to ask for a motion to adjourn the special meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Second, all in favor? All righty, and now we are in our regular meeting. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Sure appreciate it. Get everything back together. So if you all would please stand and remain standing. Do the Pledge of Allegiance. Begin with. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is Mr. Caldwell here? Yes, sir. Would you mind doing an invocation for us?
We thank you, dear Lord, for this beautiful and wonderful day that you have given us. We pray, Father God, that your hand, your presence, and your wisdom will be felt with everything that is done here tonight, and that you will guide everything that will be done with your will, with your purpose, and the things that will always do good. Again, we just thank you for the opportunity to meet in good faith and good health. And we pray this prayer to you in Jesus' holy and precious name. Amen.
And if you would, just remain standing. We'll have a moment of silence for our neighbors who may have passed away, one of which was Jack Law.
Don't forget Ron Sarcina over
Ron.
on Loma Linda too, please.
Thank you very much. Please be seated. If you would, take your phones and cut them off or put the ringers down. At this time, I'll ask anybody on the board if there's anything that's a conflict of interest on the agenda, please let it be known now. My glasses. All right, next up is the adoption of the agenda as it is. Okay, have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor? Thank you. Next up is the planning board report. Ms. Truax.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'd like to go over our planning board meeting and what was adopted and unanimously on all three of them. The ordinance amendment to unify the development ordinance to simplify zoning permit application requirements. We just voted to simplify our zoning permits for our staff. The ordinance amendment, unified development ordinance to update the Coastal Area Management Act, minor permits, program administrative requirements. The county is, and Frank may speak to this, have requested that they're not going to be doing our CAMA permits. And so we're going to pass the ordinance to do that. Ordinance amendment to the Unified Development Ordinance to clarify previous surfaces of the waters that, and we approved that. The ordinances on the Unified Development Ordinance to clarify the process for determining the statute of unlisted users. The table of permits voted by all planning board members. the ordinance amendment to the Unified Development Ordinance to clarify window signs, and that was passed. And if there's any questions, y'all are welcome to ask Frank. He could give you more detail, and maybe you'll receive the minutes from the meeting yourselves that you've reviewed. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Minnie. All right, next up is public comment. We had 2 people sign up. First is Danielle Freeman. Please come to the podium.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Danielle Freeman. I live at 201 Star Hill Drive, and many of us have been concerned about the vape shop that wants very much to sell vape products in our town. And a group of us got together and created a petition that we brought around the neighborhood, and many of our neighbors signed it. And I'd like to read the petition and have it put in and submit it to the board. Preserve the integrity of our neighborhood. Say no to allowing a vape shop in the Carteret Crossing Shopping Center. Requesting elected officials to continue to fight for our town. We, the concerned residents of Cape Carteret, urge our elected officials to continue to fight against the establishment of a vape shop in our neighborhood. We believe that such a change would have detrimental effects on our community and compromise the well-being of its residents. 1. Negative impact on public health. Vaping has been linked to numerous health risks, including lung damage and addiction to nicotine. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, e-cigarette use among youth has reached epidemic proportions in recent years, with over 3.6 million middle and high school students currently using these products. 2. Influence on youth. Allowing a vape shop in close proximity to schools or residential areas could expose impressionable young individuals to harmful substances and encourage experimentation with vaping products. Studies have shown that easy access to tobacco-related products significantly increases the likelihood of youth initiation. 3. Potential increase in smoking rates. Contrary to popular belief, vaping does not necessarily lead smokers away from traditional cigarettes. Instead, it may serve as a gateway for non-smokers towards smoking combustible tobacco products later on. A study published by JAMA Pediatrics found that teenagers who use e-cigarettes were more likely than their peers who didn't vape to start smoking within 6 months. 4. Negative economic impact. While some argue that introducing new businesses can boost local economies, it is important to consider long-term consequences as well. The presence of a vape shop may deter families from moving into our neighborhood due to concerns about their children's health and safety, ultimately affecting property values negatively. 5. Community character preservation. Our neighborhood prides itself on being family-friendly with an emphasis on healthy living environments for all residents, young and old alike. Introducing a vape shop contradicts this vision and may attract an undesirable element to our community. We respectfully request that the Cape Carteret BOC continue to fight to take into account these concerns and prioritizes the well-being of our community over potential fears of losing the case in court. We believe you have to stand up for what is right, and sometimes that costs money. We believe that we may have to protect the health, safety, and character of Cape Carteret for generations to come. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Sincerely, residents of Cape Carteret. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, next up is Patricia Rudderman.
Hello, my name is Patricia Rudderman. I live at 315 Star Hill Drive, and I'm going to be probably beating a dead horse here about the non-compliance of the stop signs, the entire loop of Star Hill, starting at Fox Drive, where we have a stop sign there that people coming on from Fox onto Star Hill, no such thing, not even a California stop. Turning right, going from Star Hill to Star Hill, again, there's a stop sign there that nobody pays attention to. I think it's because part of the reason of that is because people coming in the opposite direction don't have a stop, they just have an automatic turn right. So I guess because people are turning right, they figure they can turn left without even bothering with the stop. And then again, at Pine Lake and at St. Augustine, where there is a stop sign for the people on St. Augustine, but it is a throughway for those of us on Star Hill. And there's been more than one or two times that I've been close to being T-boned because people don't stop. They just assume everybody is going to be turning on St. Augustine, and that's not happening. The police sometimes are on Pine Lake by the stop sign there, but everybody knows kind of to look there. Or I don't know, birds or something send out messages that there's a police car there. So I don't know if there's some other place where you can hide or something, but it really is getting out of control. And there's also, and I don't know if you've received any phone calls on this, somebody on the straightaway there, which is where I'm at, thinks that he's at the Speedway. And he goes like the hammers of you know what down that road. And I think it's a kid in a little souped up car, and he's trying to see how fast he can go. But, you know, that is still a residential area. You never know. We don't have kids on those 7 homes, but you never know if some kid is going to be visiting grandma and grandpa or whatever. It can be dangerous, and it's not the speed limit. So he doesn't have a muffler on his car either, I don't think. He's very noisy. I don't care about the noise. I care about the speed. So that is my complaint for the day. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have anybody email in? Okay. All right. 2 things that weren't on the agenda, just real quick. I just want to acknowledge Ms. Walter, who is our elect for the county commission.
Thank you.
We appreciate you being here. And an unscheduled presentation. Dot, would you mind standing up, please? If you come to these meetings, you know Dot's always here. She's always parking at the same spot. So we have something for you. We'd like to honor you with this Dot spot. And I love to see people here. That's what it's all about. This is your town, and I can't emphasize that enough. That's why I like to see people here. A lot of people don't. in the smallest part of government, that's the least we can do is acknowledge you guys. And thank you all for being here. Next up on the agenda is the consent agenda.
Motion to adopt consent agenda as written.
Okay, do I have a second? Okay, all in favor? Thank you. All right, next is the ordinance amending the Unified Development Ordinance to establish the Town Center zoning district. Frank.
Thank you, Mayor Baker, commissioners. As you know, the board has discussed the town center concept several times over the last year and a half or so. Most recently, the board reviewed the proposed ordinance that's in your packet tonight at your May meeting. You conducted a public hearing at that time, but decided to delay consideration of the ordinance until the end of the summer. And so here we are, just about at the end of the summer. I've scheduled this for further discussion and consideration by the Board of Commissioners at your meeting tonight, or perhaps at a future meeting if you're so inclined. I will not go through all of the details associated with the ordinance amendment now, but just kind of hit on a few of the high points. First of all, it is intended to essentially implement the vision that you see on the screen, which is the town center concept that was included in the town's CAMA and comprehensive land use plan that was adopted almost 2 years ago by the Board of Commissioners after a lengthy public input process for about a year or two prior to that. But essentially what this ordinance amendment would do is set up a regulatory scheme to promote more of a village style, downtown, mixed use, multifamily residential, village style atmosphere in the area generally bounded by Highway 58 and Taylor Notion Road and NC 24. So this is rooted in that comprehensive planning process that the community undertook a few years ago. The ordinance that's in your packet, I will say that first of all, it's intended to provide an incentive for the property owners and for the developers in that part of town to hopefully incentivize this kind of development. It's also written to be intentionally straightforward and simple. It's not intended to address every possible scenario that might come up, but it's intended to create that design concept that's outlined on the screen. And quite frankly, it's intended to be more flexible. It's intended to provide more development opportunities for landowners. And quite frankly, it's intended to be more lucrative for the landowners, so that hopefully at the end of the day, when this vision is realized, you wind up with quality new development in that part of town, a distinct and special sense of place in Cape Carteret. The area, I think everybody's familiar with it, but just for those in the audience, the area that would be subject to this town center zoning district is basically outlined with the thick dark line here. It's everything between 2458 and Taylor Notion Road, but south of Arden Oaks. So those parcels are primarily zoned commercial, B20 now. There is some R20 and some R30. If the board ultimately adopts the regulations included in the UDO amendment, you could do that potentially as early as tonight. You may do that in October or November, either in the form presented or with whatever adjustments you think are appropriate. If the board approves the new town center zoning district, the next step would then be to engage the property owners outlined in the dark line area and proceed with the rezoning process. So ultimately, the parcels that you see in red and blue and yellow on the map would be rezoned to maybe orange, whatever color we call it. It'll be zoned town center zoning district. And so the nuts and bolts of the town center zoning district, first of all, it does not eliminate any of the currently permitted uses within the zoning districts that are currently represented in that area. That's intentional. The intent behind this district is not to harm any existing property owners. It's simply to provide development options, additional flexibility. It adds several other land uses. Most notably, it's that multifamily residential, it's that mixed use category where you might have businesses on the ground floor, perhaps condos or apartments on the upper floors. I would add also at a relatively low building height. Everything would be capped at 40 feet in that zoning district, so we're not talking about high-rise buildings or anything like that. It does allow a maximum density of 8 units per acre if it's a multifamily residential building or if it is a mixed-use building. It also allows a maximum residential density of 6 units per acre if you go with something that I've defined as village single-family residential. And it essentially is smaller lots, 7,200 square foot lots, with the homes more like a cottage style home located closer to the street, closer in proximity, with sidewalks, with nice landscaping in the right of ways, et cetera. So it provides that additional flexibility, that additional density. It specifically requires the parking to be on the rear or the side of the structures, again, trying to create that village type feel, that smaller town center type concept. And you can see there's an example of maybe some of the multifamily residential or the mixed use buildings, a little bit more in this picture here. Some of the smaller single family village single family homes would be something along the lines of these structures in here. It is also intended to require any collector streets in this area. You know, ultimately, I think there's been a lot of discussion about the desire to have some more through streets going through the triangle at some point in the future. Any through streets that might be constructed in that area that would be collector streets, more heavier traffic volumes, those would be required to be public streets. There's a provision in the proposed ordinance amendment that if it's more of that village single-family residential style, maybe a condo building, for example, you could have private streets. So maybe something along the lines of the private streets in Cape Point, for example. That's envisioned as a possibility under the ordinance. However, something like Enterprise Drive or Golf and Dolphin Drive would not be envisioned under this ordinance as it's drafted for your consideration tonight. Those would be higher volume streets intended to be the main thoroughfares through this area in the future. Few of the other, just kind of the high points associated with it. If, for example, the property owner did not want to follow the town center zoning district, there's a provision that they can continue to follow the R20, the B20 zoning districts that are currently in place. But quite frankly, the ordinance is structured so that you probably wouldn't want to do that. It would not make as much financial sense for you to adhere to the current zoning districts as it would to the new town center zoning district. However, nonetheless, that option is there if the property owner chose to select that. So there's an option there for that. Some other of the basic requirements, the setbacks are intentionally a minimum of 5 feet from the street right away and a maximum of 10 feet. Again, because we want the buildings up closer to the street. We don't want them set further back. There is an exception adjacent to the Arden Oaks subdivision because that's the only established residential neighborhood abutting this proposed area. There's a 30-foot setback required adjacent to any existing residential subdivisions, and there are also buffer requirements included in here as well. All of the new subdivision streets and sidewalks are required to include curb and gutter. And so there would be parking spaces on the sides of those streets. There would be trees and landscaping and sidewalks in the right of way there. Those parking spaces on the street could count toward the parking requirements for a business or for maybe a multifamily or mixed use residential building as well. I won't get into the rest of the details. Those are the kind of the high points. I think the reality of it is by putting this set of ordinances in place, it clearly communicates to current and future landowners, current and future developers, what the possibilities are in that area. It sets up a framework that, again, is more flexible, more lucrative, and hopefully results in higher quality development in Cape Carteret in the future. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. If there are aspects of the proposal that you are not comfortable with, please, by all means, discuss those, share those with me. If there are elements that you'd like to see adjusted, please share those with me as well. I've tried to draft the ordinance amendment to achieve the vision that's in that CAMA and comprehensive land use plan. So I look forward to your questions and discussion.
questions for Frank?
Yeah, Frank, I think you've done a great job answering my questions in particular, especially about the public streets versus and the private streets. But, you've been dealing with this for what, 2 years now? I think it's time to put it to bed tonight.
Yeah, it's funny. I had that similar thought. We've talked about this a lot, and Frank, you definitely have listened to us, and we tabled it back in May, I think it was, just because there were some other things going on, but that really doesn't minimize the effort by the planning board, the efforts that they put into it, and so planning board, you did a great job, sort of workshopping that out. I think this has gone through a few different versions and things like that. So I agree with Commissioner Martin. I support this. I think we've talked about this. I think this is a really strong step forward for Cape Carteret.
It's futuristic for our town.
It is.
It's our town's future.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the amended Unified Development Ordinance to establish the town center.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? All right, thank you.
Thank you. We will initiate the rezoning process, going through the planning board, and certainly provide all the notices to the property owners and so forth. That'll take several months to happen, but thank you.
All right, we have a few coming up where we have a public hearing, so we'll let Frank give a description and then we'll do public hearing and then the board can have at it. If everybody's okay with that.
Okay.
So first one is the ordinance amending the Unified Development Ordinance to clarify the determination of unlisted uses.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Baker. Commissioners, you may recall that at the last meeting, you all adopted some amendments to the UDO that added several specific uses to the B30 zoning district as a special use. And that was adopted at your August meeting. That's in place now. Following that meeting, which we think that was a nice improvement for the board to make and put us in a better legal position for any future issues that may come up, the town attorney and I discussed ways to even further strengthen that. So the proposed ordinance that's in your packet tonight essentially automatically does what you all just did with the ordinance you adopted in August. Basically, it amends the language to say that if the use is proposed and it is not similar enough to any of the existing uses that are listed in our table of permitted and special uses, it automatically is allowed in the B30 zoning district with a special use permit. So it kind of, I think we did a good job of identifying potential uses that might cause concern in the community in the future, but this is really just another way to kind of really tighten that up even more. So that's a proposal for your consideration tonight. As I shared with you at your last meeting, we have one parcel in town that's zoned B30, but certainly an applicant might come in and ask you to rezone a particular parcel to B30. So that's always an option in the future. The good thing about that is that's going to go through a legislative and transparent process with your planning board and ultimately with the Board of Commissioners. If it is that parcel that's already zoned B30, they would need to secure a special use permit. That process is going to go through a quasi-judicial process and ultimately be determined by the Board of Commissioners. So we've added this for your consideration, really just to strengthen the town's position in the future.
Thank you, Frank.
And public hearing is required. We did advertise that for tonight, so if you're so inclined, I'd ask you to.
All right, so first we'll go ahead and entertain a motion to go into the public hearing. Okay, second. All in favor? All right, we're now in public hearing. Do we have anybody sign up to speak? Any comments? If not, then I'll entertain a motion to go out of the
Motion to go back in the open session.
Okay, and second. All in favor? All right, we're back in regular session. So any questions for Frank?
So, where you're on 14.22, where we were talking about changing the word may to shall. You see where I'm at?
Yes,
And y'all have recommended shall attempt to
yes.
instead of shall. To me, that seems kind of weak to say attempt to. Why wouldn't we just go with the word shall? That's like mandatory. It's not. It's like I shall eat apple. I may eat apple. I shall attempt to eat apple. I mean, it's kind of like.
You want to address that, Brad? You want me to? No, I think so. What the language is saying here is that when someone comes in with a proposed use that is not specifically special uses, the first thing we're going to do, we shall attempt to classify that as an existing use. Right? So it's requiring us to match it up with the most similar use. But what it does say is if that's not possible, if we can't do that, it's automatically in that B30 zone. If you want to change that language to may, I think we certainly could consider that.
I don't like the word may. I just like the word shall. Just like there's no.
She's asking for stronger language.
Yeah, because may is weak and attempt to is weak to me. Like you shall determine.
Brett?
Well, I think the issue there, sorry, I think that the issue there is there may be a circumstance in which you're unable to determine a similar use, right? So if you take out shall attempt to, then it's shall determine a similar use. And I think that the issue there is we may say there is no similar use, and that's what the default will go to the B30. I think we're getting to, it used to be may, the language was may beforehand, and we strengthened it to shall. And then instead of having the default, we clarified the default because that was one of the issues that was raised in the vape shop matter that came before the board, is they had, Board of Adjustment, I should say, they had some questions as to what was referenced by when a determination cannot be made. So here we have when the UDO administrator determines that proposed uses impacts are not similar, then it goes to that B30 zone. I think we're getting to where the board would like.
I think they address it if you read the rest of the sentence. I believe that it addresses, by leaving the attempt to in there, it addresses what the UDO administrator will do in the event that they cannot determine a similar use.
Yeah, I think you would either want to stay with shall attempt to or stay with may. I don't think you want to delete the phrase attempt to. I think that's crucial for the word shall, but you can chime in.
Well, to me, shall can mean must, may, will, is. I mean, it can cover a whole lot of stuff. Shall can. But may, I feel like that's too weak.
Right, we took
I gotta pick one. I guess I have to go with shall attempt to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more of the town manager's efforts at that point. So I'm fine with shall attempt to.
Yeah, I think we're fine with may. I think we're fine with shall attempt to. My point is I would not keep it as just shall. I would keep the attempt to in there. Because at that point in time, I don't think you want to pigeonhole the UDO administrator into picking an exact use that's already listed, right? If there's a question about it, you want it to default to that B30 special use.
That prevents it from going, if you put shall in there, it's going to prevent it from going to a special use permit. Because he's going to have to pick a use. And then once he picks that use, it may or may not be in that permitted list. But if he cannot determine a use, then he's going to be forced to go to a special permit process or a special use permit.
Shall attempt to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you want the flexibility for the staff person at that stage of the process.
I certainly agree with Commissioner Barnhill wanting the strongest language possible, and I understand.
Yeah.
And that's clearly what we're trying to achieve. So we're trying to make it as strong as possible because of the concerns that have come up. So.
Any more questions for Frank?
No, I think this is a really good addition to our UDO. I mean, and really this shows just how good of a team we have kind of in Cape Carteret, the town attorney and the town manager. I mean, coming up with this, the subject around this is, tobacco and vape shops. This really adds a bit of a good spot to point things. So, and normally I'm not supportive of the special use process, permit process. I think it takes your elected officials and somewhat gags them to some extent. But I do think this is a good place for it in this scenario. So I'm supportive of this. I think this is a good idea.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance amended UDO to clarify the determination of unlisted uses.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor? Thank you. All right, we shall move on.
Good choice of words.
Yeah, well, one thing to keep in mind also is probably 5 years ago, we didn't think we'd be talking about vape shops, right? So who knows what the board will be dealing with 5 years from now. There could be something coming up none of us could even envision. So.
All right, next up is the ordinance amending the Unified Development Ordinance to clarify provisions for window signs. We also have public hearing on that as well. Give us an overview, Frank.
Yeah, Mayor Baker, Commissioners. So this is another proposed UDO amendment. So essentially, the way that the town's sign ordinance reads now, a commercial business in town is entitled to a certain area of signage on their building, and that's tied to the linear feet of frontage they have on a street. So for every linear feet of street frontage, they're entitled to 3 square feet of sign area. And so probably the simple way to think about that is if you had a sign going across the entire width of the building that you're looking at, it'd be 3 foot tall going from wall to wall. That's in reality, people don't do that. They make the signs a little bigger and they don't take up the whole wall with the signs. So that's what our sign ordinance says. And so, for example, if you have a building that has 100 feet of frontage on the street, they're entitled to a grand total of 300 square feet of signage, for example. And that's everything. That's freestanding signs, that's wall-mounted signs, that's canopy signs, etc. And I think that's actually a pretty good ordinance, and I think has served the town pretty well over the years. What it doesn't capture, though, are window signs. And so we have another provision in our sign ordinance that makes window signs exempt. So if there's a sign pasted on the inside of a window or on the outside of a window, it's exempt. It's just automatically allowed. And theoretically, you could fill up that entire window with additional signage. It doesn't count toward that formula that I mentioned to you. So considering some of the recent concerns in the community and looking forward on those kind of issues, the thought process at the staff level is we probably don't want any business covering up all of the windows with signage. So the proposal for your consideration tonight is to simply eliminate that exemption for windows. Window signs would still be allowed in Cape Carteret, whether they're the inside or the outside of the window. But what this does is it makes it subject to that formula. So for example, that 100-foot building, 300 square feet, they might have 30 feet of freestanding sign, they may have 150 feet of wall signs, and they may have 120 feet of window signs. And obviously there's numerous examples you could cite for that. So they'd still be allowed, they'd just be subject to that limitation. And what I hope that will result in is the avoidance of any business plastering signs all over the entire window. So that was the intent behind it. We drafted it. We shared that with the planning board at their last meeting. They unanimously recommend approval of this ordinance amendment as well. And we think it's something that would benefit the community going forward, help with the aesthetic quality. We don't think it's going to harm any of the existing businesses in town. Most of them don't have very much in the way of window signage, and so we just want to keep it that way. And we did advertise for a public hearing.
That's
for
right.
this as well,
So entertain a motion to go into the public hearing.
I'll make that motion.
All right, second. I'll give it to you. All in favor? All right, we're now in public hearing for this particular event. Did anybody sign up? Any comments? I think the key thing to remember here is it's not going to affect anything that's existing. So if you own a business, you've already got signs up. There's nothing that will be out of compliance if this goes forward. I didn't say anything out of turn. Okay, all right. All right, with no comments, I'll entertain a motion to come out back into the regular session. Okay. Second. All in favor? Thank you. Any questions for Frank?
I got a question. So these bright lights that are on these big shops, like the wattage of the lights, is there like anywhere, I mean, like they're tasteful signs at Mac Daddy's in the church over there, but you know how bright they are? It's like carnival ride bright. Is there any leeway in that? Or are we just kind of go with?
Yeah, so we require the signs to be illuminated from the inside or to shine directly on the light. There are some illumination requirements in the sign ordinance. I think we're fine on that issue. We do have a provision in our sign ordinance that essentially says you can't have strings of lights going on. I think that's a good provision that we would want to keep in the ordinance. So our interpretation of that is whether that's a string of light bulbs around the building or the windows, or whether that's a string of like a consistent, tubular rope light or something like that. We do not allow those under our existing ordinance provisions.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the ordinance amending the UDO, clarify provisions for window signs.
Second. Okay. All in favor? All right, thank you. Next up is the ordinance amending Unified Development Ordinance to ensure consistency with state regulations defining impervious surface.
Thank you, Mayor Baker. Commissioners, this actually is something that we drafted following your last meeting in August. You may recall at the end of that meeting, Commissioner Ritchie made a comment about making sure that our impervious surface definitions are consistent with the state definitions of impervious surface. That was clearly the intent of our existing ordinance, but we wanted to tighten that up. So we took the proposed ordinance amendment in your packet to the planning board at their meeting last month. They recommend adoption of the ordinance amendment presented for your consideration tonight. Essentially what it does is it simply stipulates certain materials that are not considered impervious surface. And that list is included as items A through I in the ordinance amendment. Swimming pool water, slatted wooden decking, gravel or stone used for landscaping, porous concrete, permeable interlocking concrete pavers, concrete grid pavers, porous asphalt, number 57 stone. Then we added a catch-all phrase of any other material that's determined not to be impervious under the state of North Carolina's regulations. So if the board adopts this ordinance tonight, we would mirror exactly the state's requirements. As we talked about at your last meeting, the only time this ever comes into play in Cape Carteret in our town ordinance is if a single family home has more than 30% impervious coverage. If they have more than 30% impervious coverage, we require a stormwater plan, and it's based on the amount of impervious area, and you have to basically infiltrate 2 inches of rainfall on your site. These materials would not be considered as impervious. Things like the roof, the driveway, the sidewalks, that's impervious. These things would not. If it's a commercial project or if it's a large residential development, that's going to fall under the state stormwater permits anyway, and they're going to be subject to the requirements that we have listed here already. So that's an attempt to make sure we match exactly with the state. And a public hearing was also advertised for tonight.
Okay, so entertain a motion to go into public hearing on this issue. John? Second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay. We are now in public hearing. Do we have anybody speak up? Any comments? Anybody? If not, I'll entertain entertain a motion to go out of the public hearing and back into regular session. John?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor? All right, we are back in regular session. Any questions for Frank?
Thank you, Frank. Sure. This is, it's basically water quality control of our center. That's our number one asset that we have to protect.
More comments, questions? Not to have a motion.
I'll make a motion that we vote to adopt the ordinance amendment to the UDO to be in compliance with the state regulation defining impervious surfaces as stated.
Okay.
I'll second that
All
motion.
right, Cameron. All right, all in favor? I'm just waiting to see if
Yes.
Courtney, are you opposed?
I'm in. I'm for it.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
All right, next is the ordinance amending Unified Development Ordinance to implement town administration and enforcement of CAMA minor development permits.
Thank you, Mayor Baker, Commissioners. This ordinance amendment, quite simply, would just make town of Cape Carteret employees responsible for administering and enforcing CAMA minor development permits. This is a role that the town actually performed in the past, several years ago. In more recent years, Carteret County has been providing this service for the town of Cape Carteret. About a year and a half ago or so, they approached me and indicated that they were no longer willing to provide this service for the town. They don't provide that for any of the other incorporated municipalities in Carteret County. And I told them, okay, thank you for doing it for us for all these years. And we've got a new staff person coming on board. We'll work toward transitioning this back to the town of Cape Carteret. There's a certain amount of training that's required from the Division of Coastal Management for a town to provide these services. Town planner Julie Shambaugh has completed most of that training by now. She still has a little bit more to go. But we're now finally in a position, we just didn't have anyone capable of doing it prior to this. We're now in a position where we can provide the CAMA permitting services for the minor development permits. And these are really simple things. It mostly has to do with single family development that's within either 575 feet of the shoreline or in some cases within 75 feet of the shoreline. So if you think about the map of Cape Carteret, it's really the areas just along Bogue Sound, Deer Creek, and Pettiford Creek. Carteret County, when I talked with them, they told me that they had issued 10 permits over the course of the last year. So I don't think this is going to be a significant workload for us going forward. It's more really an issue of having someone who's had the training and is capable of issuing the permits going forward. The North Carolina Division of Coastal Management staff, their Morehead City office, they'll continue to handle things like bulkheads and docks and boat lifts and things like that, as well as any more major development projects. If there's a huge new development proposed in Cape Carteret, I don't think you'll really see that just because of the geography of Cape Carteret here, but they'll still continue to do bulkheads, docks, all of those kind of water dependent structures going forward. And that's the way the program works everywhere in North Carolina. So all of the other towns handle these minor development permits. And so if the board approves the ordinance tonight, we would start doing that. We probably would not begin that until November, perhaps December. If the board adopts the ordinance amendment, it has to go to the North Carolina Coastal Resources Commission in November, and they have to approve it. I think that's probably more of an administrative exercise at that point in time. The ordinance amendment, the staff will enjoy when I say this. I absolutely hate long and complicated ordinances. I'm trying to make them all shorter and simpler. But CAMA requires you to adopt this ordinance. So that's why it's as long as it is. And it's proposed for it to be an appendix to our UDO. So And it really just spells out kind of the administrative processes that we'll go through with the Division of Coastal Management. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. And again, we did advertise a public hearing for this. The planning board did review this at their meeting last month, and they also recommend approval of this ordinance amendment as well.
All right, so I entertain a motion to go into public hearing. John, second.
Second.
All in favor? All right, we're now in the last public hearing of the evening. Did anybody sign up? No. Any comments? Anybody want to speak? If not, then I will entertain a motion to go back into regular session.
Make that motion.
Okay, Karen. And John. All in favor? Thank you. All right, we're back in session. Were any questions or comments to Frank?
I got one question.
Yes.
So if I'm understanding you properly, minor camera permits will not include docks, seawalls?
You
Or
still,
they will?
well, you still have to get a permit for those items, but that goes through the Division of Coastal Management Office in Morehead City.
All right.
Those are not minor permits. We would only handle the minor permits.
Okay. What about the zoning permit, those kind of things? Will that come through us? Will they send people to our camera officer or town office for zoning?
Yeah, so they should, and the county's been doing that before. So, we require a zoning permit for many, many things going on in the town, including single-family homes, sheds, fences, additions, driveways, what have you. We also require them for water facilities, things like a dock or a bulkhead or whatever the case may be. So the person's still required to get a zoning permit for that. All this does is it simply says that we will issue the actual CAMA permit for these minor development issues, which are really tend to be associated with single family homes. And like I said, there's probably 10, maybe 15 a year, give or take. But yes, they still need to get a zoning permit from us. I will tell you, however, that one of my goals, and as you know, I'm working on trying to rewrite the whole UDO and simplify it. My personal position, and the board may disagree with me, and the planning board may disagree, and that's perfectly fine. I want to make sure we do what your will is. But I don't think we need to require a zoning permit for something that also requires a CAMA permit. So at the moment we do, but when I bring you the simplified UDO, which you may like or may not like, that's going to be one of my recommendations, because in my view, and it's up to the Board of Commissioners, in my view, I think we ought to just basically enforce the same rules that the state enforces. I don't think the town's rules, we don't have any more significant rules for docks or bulkheads or things like that. Again, you may disagree with me. I don't know the history on how that got to be in the town. I don't want to require a permit from the town for those going forward, but we do currently.
Well, just, excuse me, the zoning permit makes the town aware that's going on.
It definitely helps in that regard.
It helps in that regard. But also, what bothers me the most is that recently, in the last year, we've had one property owner clear over an acre, and we never disciplined anybody with camera or anything. And by clearing in 1 acre under North Carolina law, that requires a major camera and a stormwater plan. Now you have 2 home sites, two building sites. One is permitted currently for a home. It was disturbed over an acre, put in a dock, and there's no stormwater. So my concern is the asset,
Sure.
the water. And we had in the recent event a couple weeks ago, one of the people in an adjoining neighborhood where I live, and all this rain, we had a tremendous plume of dirt, which trickled down not only into my canal, the canal across the way, and the canal that was on. And there was substantial, and I mean substantial, and I haven't seen anybody do anything about it.
Yeah, so to clarify on that, I'm familiar with the one issue that I think you're speaking of. I may not be familiar with the second one, but in the case of the one issue on Deer Creek Drive, the ability to, whether you clear 1 acre or whether you clear 100 acres, that responsibility for a stormwater plan depends on how much impervious coverage there is in terms of the town's ordinances. If it's more than an acre, then it kicks it into the state stormwater permitting process, which is through the Division of our Erosion and Sedimentation Control. And so when that particular issue came up, it was actually our staff that flagged that and notified the appropriate state staff. And they came out and they took a look at that and took enforcement action. I think ultimately in that case, it may be that they were just below an acre, but that's something we are not currently involved in now, nor would we be involved in the future. But we did take steps to notify the appropriate state personnel, and they're aware of it, and they're working with the applicant on that one. But that was flagged by our town planner as part of just the normal routine operations. Again, we don't, now if that house, if that particular lot, that's an acre, so that's 43,560 square feet. If they have more than 30% impervious coverage, then they're going to be required to do a stormwater plan as per the town's ordinance, and we'll absolutely enforce that.
What's an example of a minor development permit?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of dogs and bulk units are minor, but.
It's like a single family home. It might be an addition, something like that. That's pretty simple and pretty straightforward. And there's impervious coverage limits there. And we're reviewing the zoning permits for a new home or an addition anyway. So it's really not a big deal.
Basically, any disturbance that falls within CAMA's 75 or 500 or 575, whatever it is, but doesn't actually disturb the coastal, like wetlands.
Frank, you said the county had, which we know they've been providing the service and they stopped. And you said there's no other incorporated municipalities, the county's still servicing this?
Yeah, that's what I was informed by Gene Foxworth, the assistant county manager.
Do you know what BOC or Pelletier or Cedar Point's doing?
I do not know. I just accepted his explanation.
I mean, it's just kind of interesting. How much leeway did the county give you?
So, I mean, they
time. Well,
yeah, I mean, they talked to me about this probably a year and a half ago, give or take. And at the time, we didn't have a town planner permit. And so when that town planner staff person, when that position was added, that was one of my goals, was to get that person trained to do this. So, and they've been patient with us. They did give us a hard stop on July the 1st of this year. So for the last 2 months plus, folks have been having to deal with the Division of Coastal Management staff in Morehead City. And that'll work fine, I guess, but it's really easy for us to do it, and it ultimately makes it easier for the property owner, our customer in town, for the town to do it. So
I just can't help but wonder what, especially BOC and Pelletier, that probably don't have planner or town manager. What they're doing. The county's going to continue to service them. Not us. That's just,
Yeah, certainly.
Clear, it's not the county though. It's the actual DEQ employee or the CAMA employees that just happen to reside.
No, county.
Or it's the county.
Yeah. So prior to July 1st of this year, it was the county staff person out of the Western office in Cedar Point that would do that for us, because they're handling building inspections for us and so forth. In Emerald Isle or Morehead City, Atlantic Beach, Beaufort, et cetera, their planning staff handles these same permits, Cedar Point as well.
I'm just curious. I'll ask around, find out what's.
Yeah, and I don't know what they do in both Pelletier.
Well, I just didn't want our town to be singled out, by the county.
I did not perceive it as anything specific to Carteret. It was really just kind of more of their general policy and the way they're trying to structure their operations. So I don't think it was anything directed at us.
Okay.
Any more questions for Frank? Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to adopt this amendment to the UDO.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? All opposed? Okay. Carries 3-2.
So I think it requires a supermajority on the day of introduction.
I don't believe so because there's a public hearing as part.
Okay. All right.
I'll check on that.
Okay. Yeah, we'll double check on it. We may need to bring this back to you for a second vote. Doesn't change anything you did tonight. It's just there's certain ordinances that require a super majority, 2/3 majority on the day of introduction, and I just want to double check that. So if that doesn't apply to this, effective tonight. If it does apply to this, I'll bring it back to you at your next meeting for a second. So number 15, at your last meeting in August, Mayor Pro Tem Martin had requested Chancellor the Board of Commissioners to discuss any potential changes to the golf cart registration program. I included in your packet a summary of what our current program is, as well as the current ordinance and our application. Pretty straightforward. We allow golf carts on town streets as long as they meet certain safety requirements, operator requirements, and secure a permit from the town. There's a special plate, registration sticker that's fixed each year, beginning January 1st. We have a grand total of 167 golf carts registered this year up through September. Up through September of 2024. And so if the board would like to make any changes to the program, this is a chance for you to communicate those, and then we'll bring them back to you for formal consideration at your next meeting, maybe the November meeting. I would just want to get any changes finalized prior to January 1st, or really prior to December 1st, before we start seeking renewals from our current permit holders. Couple of things just to point out to you. One is that we've had some complaints of underage golf cart drivers and golf cart drivers operating recklessly, and in some cases not from the town of Cape Carteret. And so the police department routinely tries to enforce those and catch the violations. But obviously, if they don't witness it, they can't take action. So I'd encourage anyone in the community that if you see a violation that you're concerned about, please just call the police department. We'll try to get there as quickly as we can, recognizing, of course, that they may be tied up on some other call or it may take some time. But I want you to know that they try hard to get there and to address these concerns when they happen. And then they often talk with the parents as opposed to the youth when those situations come up. Another common question that we get, an issue that comes up occasionally is, can we drive on 58 or 24 Taylor Notion Road? And the answer to that is no. You can't drive a town permitted golf cart on those streets. However, we do allow people to cross Highway 24, but only at the signalized intersections. And so we have 3 signalized intersections. In reality, the Taylor Notion Road intersection is a moot point because you can't drive on those streets anyway to get anywhere. We do let people cross over at Fort, Enterprise, Golf and Dolphin, Manatee. We have had some instances where people are trying to cross on Fox Drive down on the far east end of town. It's potentially unsafe in a regular motor vehicle, and we're concerned about the safety of people in a golf cart crossing there. So we discourage that. Our police department enforces that provision. So we let them cross over 24 at the 2 signalized intersections right here in the middle of town. It's not really a big issue anywhere else on 58 or Taylor Notion Road just because of the geography. We also have a total of 15 golf carts that are registered to BOC property owners. And they're in that Hunting Bay area, which is part of BOC, but you can't get to it without going through Carteret. And so the town's ordinance, interestingly enough, actually doesn't permit a golf cart to be registered outside of the town. It has to be registered to a location in the town of Cape Carteret. When I arrived here to the town a couple of years ago, that procedure was in place, and we allowed allowed it at that time. I'm not sure what the history is. I wanted to point out that inconsistency. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have about the program and look forward to your discussion and any changes you'd like to implement.
Mayor, I'd like to ask for a general consensus from the board to no longer allow BOC residents to obtain a golf cart tag from our town. Just a general consensus.
I'm good with that.
So was there something confusing about that?
So,
Because not your thing, but as far as what it says now.
yeah, so the town's ordinance currently says that the golf cart has to be registered to a physical address in the town of Cape Carteret. So that's already in place. The best that I could determine, I did find an old document that appears to have been copied from the ordinances that also said that the operator had to be from Cape Carteret also. And it looked like in the ordinance currently, that phrase had been removed. So I wasn't here, obviously, I don't know the history. I just speculated that maybe at one point the town board made a deliberate decision to allow people from other towns to have a golf cart in our program, and maybe they just didn't take out both sections, maybe they only took out one. And again, I just don't know the history on it, but the bottom line is, if the board's will is to not allow residents of BOC or any other town, that language is already in your ordinance, and with the consensus that you all expressed tonight, we'll just simply implement that.
Well, I wasn't aware that it was already in the ordinance, so evidently it's not been enforced. So
Yeah.
If it's in there, just leave it in there and enforce it.
Yeah, and we absolutely will. That appears to be what I thought I saw everybody nodding their head on that. So
But I would also ask that the police chief somehow get the tags back from those 15 golf carts,
we can certainly do that.
because there's no way he can enforce by viewing the tag.
Yeah, the way the program works now, there's a license plate, and then every year there's a new sticker that goes on it, but we'll make
How much
back.
have they paid for those? And when is the
It runs
registration?
up in January.
Yeah, so the golf cart permits, we sell them for $75 annually. They run on a calendar year basis. A lot of people will get them early in the year, but they really kind of happen all.
Well, everything I just said is a moot point, since we now know that it's in the ordinances now, all along.
Well, I don't think it's a moot point, because I mean, clearly the town made a decision to allow them. So it's helpful to me if you don't want to allow them. My only point to you is there's no need for me to ask you to amend the ordinance.
Okay.
And we'll just change our administration of it.
Okay, thank you, Frank.
Can we put the language in that was a minute that you found, Frank, about the operator as well as the resident of Cape Carteret? Did I hear that correctly? Document that was eliminated?
Yeah, I found it in an older document, but it's not currently in our code of ordinances. So I just,
Can we add that back in, please?
I'd have to look at the language again. I mean, I guess we certainly can, if you'd like to do that. I'm happy to bring that back to you at a future meeting. I guess the only thing I would want to caution you against is, like, if, for example, if my brother's in town visiting me, for example, and he's got a driver's license and he's driving my golf cart and it's otherwise registered, I don't think we would want to stop somebody from doing something like that. But I'm just not quite sure of the history. But I'll take another look at it and provide that language to you. And if you want to change it, we can.
I'm just curious, do you have a specific reason?
Well, I mean, I never knew that you had a problem in Star Hill North with kids, but
Yeah.
if the vehicle is registered, I'm assuming it's the parent, but I would like to make sure that the owner and the vehicle are Cape Carteret residents. That's the only thing I'm asking for.
Yeah, the language right now, it says it has to be registered to a physical address in the town. We can add some language that says, the owner has to be a town resident or something to that effect, and that would allow my brother to drive it, for example.
I'm good. Thank you, Frank.
Are there any other changes you'd like to see made to the program before we head into next year?
I have a question. North Carolina long golf carts crossing like Highway 24, is there any rules or regulations that they cannot cross it? Or is it illegal for them to cross it?
Yeah, so, and Chief Silva may be able to help me with this if need be, but there are certain, if a vehicle has North Carolina tags on it, I mean, it can operate like a motor vehicle. But when the towns have the ability to set up these local golf cart programs that don't meet the DOT low-speed vehicle standards, we can come up with whatever regulations we want. We still, however, can't allow them to drive on DOT 35, if I'm not mistaken, right? So
legally they can cross at Fox Drive.
legally, I don't think they can. The speed limit in that area is 45. And no, I'm talking about crossing over 24. They can drive on Fox Drive, they can drive on Star Hill, side streets. We've had an issue with people trying to cross on a golf cart from Fox Drive over to Mark's Restaurant, that in the Bayshore Park area, in that area. And technically, I don't think the state law allows that, and we've discouraged that just because it's risky. I wouldn't do it. Matter of fact, we routinely get requests from people to add a stoplight there or some other traffic control device for cars there, and so we just don't want golf carts.
And we need one. There's been several fatalities at that intersection. If you come out of Bayshore, you're wasting your time trying to go out that way. You go all the way down to Bogue Sound Drive and come out that way. So it's we'll talk about that some other time.
Yeah, I'm actually going to schedule that for discussion for you real soon. So.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Any other changes you'd like to make? The program's very popular. People.
I just want to make sure that we've got a lot of residents here that it's their second home. They won't be affected as far as we put owners, as far as residents goes.
I'm good with it as it's written in the UDO. I mean, as long as the golf cart is registered to the address of Head Carteret, I'm fine with that. I don't think we need to start reaching into the driver's seat and saying who can be in the driver's seat of a legally registered vehicle.
Okay. I mean, we do say that they have to be 16 years of age.
Because my mom could be here or somebody's, whatever it is, as long as they meet all the other requirements and the golf cart is legally registered, I don't see why we wouldn't allow them to use that to go to Mackay's or whatever it is they're going to do.
Okay.
All right, any more discussion? If not, then we'll move on to the town manager report.
Again, several items included in there. I'll just kind of hit the high points. So as Mayor Pro Tem Martin just alluded to, I'm planning to schedule a board discussion about a few potential requests to NCDOT, one of which is some sort of traffic control device at that Fox Drive intersection that I just mentioned to you. I've had concerns about safety there. Also concerns about the speed limit on 24 near White Oak Elementary School. You know, it changes from 45 to 35 in the general vicinity of the Aquatic Center, and the rest of the town's 35. There's some thought that maybe 35 would be appropriate through the entire town on Highway 24, which it's really not that much more distance. And then also concerns about the speed limit on Taylor Notion Road. And so all of those issues, you don't have the authority to make those decisions. DOT has that sole authority, but I'm sure they would make the decision that is warranted by the data that they have with regard to traffic counts and accidents and so forth. And they'll consider your request. Doesn't mean they'll do what you want them to do, but that's a longer discussion that I'll schedule for one of your upcoming meetings here in the next few months. Fall Festival coming up in a little less than 2 months. Looking forward to that. We're planning also to do the Santa Claus tour through the neighborhoods again on December 16th and 17th. That seemed to be well received last winter, so we'll do that again. We're also working with the Girl Scouts on an official tree lighting event where they'll have cider and cookies and some caroling and so forth. Right now, I think we're zeroing in on December the 2nd. It's a Monday night. And so we'll have the new tree up. I did include an updated rendering of a potential new town hall police station. It's basically that option 2 that you all talked about that also preserved the existing building that we're in for future tenant space. So those renderings are attached. My intent over the next several weeks, months, is to recruit a couple of you and the mayor to join me with meetings with Representative Celeste Cairns, Senator Sanderson, Commissioner-elect Waldrop, perhaps some other folks to talk about that. And as Mayor Pro Tem Martin alluded to, hopefully some outside funding assistance from those entities. So pleased with the drawings that are in there. I'm expecting the bike path on 58 to get started really any day now. They've got a bulldozer out there, so getting real close. And then here in the next month or so, I'll be soliciting bids for the last phase on Taylor Notion Road and try to get that rolling along. Several other things included in here. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have or any other concerns that you have. So, yes.
I'd like to see the planning board to reconsider acquiring a zoning permit to clear a lot.
Okay.
Just only because all the peripherals. I had a gentleman clear a lot next door to me without any permit whatsoever. Took all the trees down, and the guy was there to grade it, and it's waterfront lot. I said, "Where's your silt fence?" Of course, the owner got a little upset with me. But I mean, these are the kind of things that, require, we don't know. It's like 3 lots that the guy clear cut on Channelview Drive. He put another man's stormwater permit in with jeopardy. So I really feel that we need to require a zoning permit so that we know as a town what's going on in our town.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a reasonable concern. I think, the planning board discussed it at 2 different meetings and had, I think, a thoughtful discussion about the issue. I think there are a couple of them here tonight, but I think their basic sentiment was that most of the time that happens in conjunction with somebody submitting their plans for a new home. And so most of the time it kind of happens by default anyway, but there certainly are instances where the person clears the lot before they submit for the zoning permit for the house. So I'm happy to bring that back up with them again if you'd like us to.
Frank, I got something I'd like for you to place on the planning board agenda. It came up, I don't know, a couple of years ago, former board of commissioners. It makes no sense. I don't want to get into the weeds right now, but it makes no sense to me that the majority of our waterfronts are no wake zones. All except for I think for the point that Ms. Holtz lives on down to the bridge. It makes no sense for me for that not to be.
It is a state law. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jackson.
We met on that. You two probably remember, and one of the former commissioners didn't want to declare it as no wake because he used to ski there when he was a child. So please put that on the planning board and let the planning board discuss that. And and I understand what he's saying, but it's not. The town only has no wake zones in Deer Creek and all the other creeks. It doesn't have it on that stretch from Pax's house to the bridge.
The only one is for the ramp, that little area there, I think it's the only other.
That's right. That's right. We went through this. If you want to look up the minutes from
Sure.
2 or 3 years ago, we discussed it. I don't know where Charlie or Cameron was on it.
Yeah,
but,
I remember talking about it. I remember that.
okay.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding the area you're talking about. You're talking about basically between the
Just
bridge.
declare the entire waterfront of Cape Carteret a no wake zone. We know we can't enforce it. It just makes no sense to me, and it's bothered me ever since that night.
That was the thing that came up. We couldn't enforce it because we didn't have.
Yeah, but why do we have 90% of the waterfronts?
I agree.
Okay, we can put a sign, no wake buoy out there, but I just want to put it on the planning board's agenda and let them talk about it.
Okay. All right. Let me do some research on it and better familiarize myself with the issue and then bring it forward. So,
Frank,
yes.
Ryan, you need help deploying the new buoys? I know a guy that's got a boat. We can load him in the dock and I'll take you out.
Thank you.
Have you all had any complaints on electric bikes? Because those things go pretty fast. Have you had any complaints?
They complain about motorbikes, but they're electric bikes. All over the
And they go about, what, 15, 20 miles an
place.
hour?
Pretty fast. Some goes last 35. They're like,
And they're allowed on the path? The bike path?
When you come over to Bayshore, we got four-wheelers and mini bikes and everything running around over there. So
You can't use those on the path.
Any more questions for Frank? If not, then we'll go to commissioner reports. We'll start with Steve.
yeah, I just once again want to thank the planning board for taking up this huge effort and Frank too for the getting the UDO where we want it. I know it's stressful. Ryan, thanks for what your department's doing with the culverts. Wintertime's coming, so you're not gonna be mowing and weed eating, so I guess you're gonna step that up a little bit. And I'll be glad when we're finished with the stormwater project, Frank, so we can rename that fund for something else and use it for something else. We got that money very start of COVID, and we've used it very wisely, I think, and I think we're near the end of that. So be glad when that's over with. And Chief, thank you for. I've been noticing since you're fully staffed that you're more into neighborhoods now than you are sitting out here on 24. So well, thank you for that. That's all.
Charlie, thank y'all for coming out.
I want to thank Ryan, I want to thank Minnie and the planning board. I want to thank this board because I think we've worked well together. I want to thank Frank and Will for their leadership. I want to thank the citizens for coming out. I want to thank Miss Danny for circulating petitions about the vape shop and getting the word out. And if I do anything else, I'd really like to see something done. Over the Labor Day weekend, we had several homeowners decide they have parties with live bands and live music. I don't mind music. I mean, the words are kind of low, and I can't sit on the back porch and before dinner with my family. But it's a plain one day out.
Wasn't my band, John.
No, if it was your band, I wouldn't complain. I love your band.
Well, I'd like to thank the commissioners for putting up with me. I'm hard head sometimes, but Brett and Frank and Christian work on this video. Thanks guys for coming out.
Yeah, so Danielle, thank you for that petition. And, rarely do I get to thank someone that made public comment this late in the meeting. So thank you for sticking around too. Yeah, I want to echo Patricia Rudderman's comments about the speeding, Chief. I know you and I've talked about the golf carts, the dirt bikes, the four-wheelers. I got behind another youth on a golf cart coming home from work. And they wave me around, but when they come to a stop and we're out, it's just disastrous. So, yeah, I don't know what the answer is, but I do know that last time I talked to you, you guys did step up patrols because I saw a car every evening. So I know you guys are working it. I just know that when they see that marked car, they're gone. So, so thank you for what you're doing, but yeah, it's still out there, and apparently it's in other parts of the town too. So, and then Frank, I wanted to ask about, and I don't think you know the answer to this, and you don't have to, but Star Hill North drainage easements. I don't know that the town has any, but with that neighborhood being almost, I don't know, almost 20 years old now, in some parts, the drainage is not like in other areas of town. I'm not saying that it even rises to that level, but some of these things with the equipment that Ryan has, just passing through them and cleaning out the ditches would be pretty good. So, and again, I don't think we have the easements for them, so that might have to be an effort as well, but just something we might want to think about. Because it is starting to get a little where the inlets are, it just backs up into the road because it's not over that grass hump yet. It's just minor things really.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I have to look at the plat when it was approved and how the language is worded for the easements there, but that may be something we can help with. So
Understand.
just give me a chance to do some research.
Yep. Thank you. That's all I have.
I'd also like to thank this board and the planning board. Can't run this town without that, and people don't realize they're sharing the most invaluable thing we have, which is our time. So thank you for sharing your valuable time for the town on these boards, and thank you, Ms. Friedman, for having that was your valuable time to go out because you were concerned about an issue that greatly affects this community and this town, and I acknowledge that. Thank you so much for doing that. And you too, Tricia, because we don't know if we're not told what's going on in the town. This is the opportunity and the place to do just that. And y'all let me know if Dot gets in your parking place, and I'll make sure she gets in her designated area. But thank you all for coming. There again, they say I'm corny or whatever, but it's your town. And thank you all for being here. And with that, I will just say thank you to all our staff. We have a great town, and I just can't say enough about how well run this town is. Excuse me? Yes, there was nothing done, nothing that needed to be done. Sorry, should have made a note about that. So everything's fine there, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make the motion.
Okay. Second. All in favor? Thank you all. Hope you all have a wonderful evening.